So, good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to each one of you to today's session, your first research paper from idea to publication. My name is Dr. Adarsh Keshri. I am working as a senior research fellow at Apar Health, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator of today's session. Thank you to the speakers and all the participants for being a part of it. Like many of you here today, I also began my research journey with questions. And questions you can't even imagine, with questions only just asking the answers about, the curiosity, and a strong desire to understand how it could get published in an ethical and responsible manner. So, from here, my research journey began. And this session we have designed specifically to simplify that journey for upcoming generation, for young researchers, and for all who want to do good in research and to publish. So here I would like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Pooja Sharma ma'am. Hello ma'am. Namaste ma'am. Ma'am is a
Namaste.
gynecologist by training and a clinical research leader and also a patient advocate for research. Ma'am is an MBBS from IMS BHU and an MD from IMS BHU. She is a trained gynecologist with over 30 years of experience in clinical research at AIMS New Delhi, Society for Applied Studies, and Medanta, the Medicity Gurugram. She has a personal clinical trial work in vaccines, including rota vaccines, COVID, chikungunya, and dengue. She's right now the founder and CEO at Apar Health with current interest in demystifying clinical research for the youth, and the program is known as Spark. And the other program is Patient Advocacy for Research. The effort is known as PACER. Thank you so much, ma'am, for agreeing to be a part of the speaker for the session. Now, the second speaker for the session is Dr. E. Venkat Rao, sir. Hello, sir. Welcome to the session. Sir is a distinguished public health expert and an academician with over 22 years of experience in community medicine and 33 years in the medical and public health sector across India and Maldives. A prolific researcher with over 100 plus publications, including 60 PubMed indexed and 66 Scopus index papers, which H index of 17 and I10 index of 27. Sir is currently the professor at the Institute of Medical Sciences at SUM Hospital. Sir's expertise spans across epidemiology, biostatistics, vaccine research, public health program management. Sir has also been the investigator in major clinical trials contributing to the development of vaccines. That includes COVID 19, dengue, chikungunya, polio, meningococcal diseases, with experience in teaching, policy evaluation, and stakeholder collaboration. Sir is a recognized leader in medical education, health advocacy, and applied research, and he is shaping the future of public health through his extensive work in disease control strategies and health system strengthening. We are delightful to have you, sir, here. Thank you so much for agreeing to be the speaker for today's session. Over to you, ma'am, for today's session.
Thank you so much, Adarsh, for that introduction. I'm going to share my slides. Please let me know if you're able to see them. Are you
Yes,
able
ma'am.
to see?
Yes, ma'am.
So considering that so many of you had questions about, whether we should, what is the kind of research, and because this is something, all of us want to do randomized control trials, but as youngsters, you really can't first step become a principal investigator in a randomized control trial. So when I realized that when I'm speaking to this group, probably an interesting topic would be to talk about real world evidence. And this answers several questions that were actually asked during the discussion session. So I'm going to share a small slide because when we talk about research, we are talking a lot about patient-led research, patient-driven research, and research which is relevant to the patient. So while there may be research, like many people are saying, for my CV, I'm going to do research for my CV, but finally, at some point, your research must make use for the patient. So for that, I want to start with a small story. So here is a story by a patient and the mother of the patient.
I welcomed my second son, Ashok, soon after my mother passed away. Ashok was born a very healthy 3.8 kg, happy, playful, stubborn, smart, and very, very cute. I shut down, etc. So we took him to the pediatrician, which was very hard to do because everything was shut down. And the pediatrician thought it was toxic cyanovitis, and Google also agreed. So I relaxed, but then it persisted. So I went back again, and we decided to do a scan for juvenile arthritis. That is when we saw the tumor on the adrenal gland. So when we did the PET scan and I confirmed it was actually cancer, it was extensively spread to all his bones and his lymph nodes, I was terrified. So I do what I always do, dive into research. I found some online papers from Indian authors on neuroblastoma, and I wrote to the first doctor. I joined some Facebook groups for neuroblastoma families and found CNCF Hope. And then I also found the ICMR guidelines on treating pediatric tumors like neuroblastoma. I was horrified to find it doesn't even mention immunotherapy, while CNCF says that's the most crucial thing for treating the child. So I decided to find clinical research which will take me out of this treatment into something else. And I found the US clinical trials, and I found MSK, and I found they have something called naxitamab, which basically they treat without having to do immunotherapy. Without having to do PMT. So finally I decided to raise money and get the dinutuximab to India. So I found I wrote to the company based out of US first. And then I came across clinical trials on DFMO. So this trial was fairly easy. Most of the trip to the US was just to meet the doctor and get the drugs. The follow-up, the scans, everything happened in India, and the 2 years went fairly smoothly. And after me, Dr. Sunil Bhatt has also encouraged other patients to try DFMO, and now I think the trial is also coming to India. But yes, it is not enough that our doctors are so capable and so well educated. I think we should update our documentation that we publish to know what is the most optimal treatment for anything and how to go about getting it. And yes, we must have clinical trials in India, and we should make it clear that clinical trial is little 50-50. It may or may not work, but when there is no recourse, this is the only thing you can do. Thank you.
Your attention to the fact what she said at the end of her conversation, saying that while our doctors may be brilliant, our doctors may be providing excellent care, it's very important that researchers and data is available, right? So we need to create continuously research and research related data. So let's talk a little bit about what is real world evidence is. Now, real world evidence is insights coming from real world data, which is sometimes collected outside clinical trials. Now, clinical trials are a very safe and refined and a confined environment. Real world evidence means anything that happens in the real world. Now, this could be like we call it could also be called observational studies, cohort studies. It can also be called outcomes research, impact evaluation research, surveys, patient reported outcomes, sometimes profiling. Many studies fit this definition. So today we'll talk a little bit about evidence-based medicine. We'll talk about what is the pyramid of evidence and how it is changing with time. We'll talk a little bit about real world evidence, and I'll share with you some case studies to showcase how real world evidence can make mega changes in healthcare. And how can we make a robust real world evidence study for a good impactful publication? So when we study what is evidence-based medicine, it is at the point which is overlap of clinical judgment, relevant scientific evidence which comes from publications, and what the patient's values and preferences are. So this common, space in the center is what the evidence-based medicine is and how patients should be treated. As we grow, and many of you come from pharma and medicine background, you would have seen this pyramid of levels of evidence. If you haven't, please do go and see what are the levels of evidence. Now, traditionally, levels of evidence shows that case series, cohort studies are a lower level of evidence than randomized control trials and systematic reviews, which are at the top of the pyramid. But interestingly, I will share with you a very unique study by the World Health Organization. Now, all of us very happily use non-sugar sweeteners. Do you know what non-sugar sweeteners are? It's like the Coke Zero that you drink. The sweetener in that is the non-sugar sweetener. Now, why non-sugar sweeteners? The randomized control trials of non-sugar sweeteners showed that there is decrease in body weight, there is decrease in BMI. It actually does not impact diabetes, but it is actually showing that it is good for, controlling your weight and controlling your BMI. So all of us very happily are thinking, I'm drinking Coke, which is non-sugar, so it doesn't matter, right? I'm eating halwa, which is non-sugar, so it's all right. But interestingly, real world evidence, which comes from cohort or case control study, showed that there was increase in obesity. That means people gained weight. There was increase in BMI. There was increase in diabetes and increase in high fasting glucose and actually even increase in mortality. Randomized control trial shows there was decrease in energy intake and sugar intake, and there was no impact on cancer. But here, in case control and cohort, there was actually increase in bladder cancer with saccharin, and there was actually some increase in preterm birth. So what I'm trying to say is that this real world evidence is what happens in the real world. And why does this change happen? If anybody has any idea? So interestingly, you know why it happens? Because in randomized control trials, you are given sachets of the non-sugar sweeteners or a fixed dose of a non-sugar sweetener. But in the real world, what happens is that we will use the non-sugar sweetener and we will make halwa out of it. We will make cake out of it. We will make gulab jamuns out of it. And that is what is going to cause difference in what we are seeing here. But interestingly, people do not live in randomized control trials. They live in real world evidence and real world situations. So it's very important to understand how real world evidence can impact this data and how it can impact healthcare practice. So this pyramid that we saw in the beginning, here, the levels of evidence pyramid, interestingly, there was a very nice article in BMJ in 2016, which showed that this pyramid is now changing. So RCTs are in a perfect controlled world, but real world evidence comes from a real world. My personal viewpoint is that real world evidence is very, very relevant and is the strongest of value to the patient because it is closest to his real life situations. So don't underestimate real world evidence. Do not underestimate, do not think my question is very small. And I will share with you one small question that resulted in a very interesting study. So the first one that I will talk is about a virus. This is the rotavirus vaccine, and I was happy, I'm really glad that I was part of this exercise. So this was a virus that was observed in a real world situation in an observational study in the neonatal ICU of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, and resulted in finally creation of the rotavirus vaccine, which was the first indigenously developed in India vaccine. So first, let me show you in 1993, the first papers that came out were observational, right? This was an observational study saying that there was some protection by a neonatal rotavirus infection due to subsequent rotavirus diarrhea. So it's observational. Characterization of rotavirus strains, again observational. We are just seeing what are the kind of strains that are happening in the ICU. Then comes the epidemiology, which is also observational. from these 3-4 observational studies, developed the first candidate rotavirus vaccine. This then resulted in a clinical trial. And this is where I joined the team, and you can see my name on the paper. So then started the clinical trials. So the first clinical trial, right? And finally, their product was in the market. Now, again, after the product is in the market, again, there is an impact evaluation and surveillance, which are again observational studies. Cost effectiveness, impact of this, again observational studies. So this whole cycle, it starts with observational, goes into interventional, and goes back into observation. So some gentleman had said, that the data, people, where can we find these research questions? These research questions are continuously existing in the universe. It's what interests you. Now, let me get you to the second case study, which is talking about surgical antibiotic prophylaxis. Now, we have all read about how hand washing in obstetrics and deliveries actually made a lot of difference. Just doing hand washing made a lot of difference to preventing, puerperal sepsis, that is infection after delivery. But coming to a more relevant study, now let's see that real world evidence resulted in shortening duration of surgical antibiotic prophylaxis. When I was a resident, we were giving antibiotics for 3 to 7 days for any kind of surgery. Today, they are doing complicated surgeries and only 1 day of antibiotic is actually being given. Because if you give too many antibiotics, you are resulting in antimicrobial resistance and a bigger problem is happening. So this very simple question, does extending antibiotic prophylaxis beyond 24 hours actually reduce surgical site infection? This is the research question. And the really interesting study that I actually found was, and the critical pivotal study that caused the change in this practice, that is the timing of surgical antibiotic prophylaxis and risk of surgical site infection, is a retrospective cohort real world study. So it's not an interventional study. It's not necessary that every study needs to be interventional or randomized control to make a difference. So these studies, which were observational, actually made a difference to practice of all surgeons all over the world. This is reinforced by WHO, CDC, and NICE. And it started by one conversation somewhere on a round, right? Now, the third one that I want to bring to you is from public health perspective, and how, looking at, we work closely with this team of childhood cancer, how patients can make a difference to public health. Now, here, estimation of what are the national levels of incidence of childhood and adolescent cancers, and these several registries that you know of are again observational, right? And they result in a lot of interesting studies. So just observation can result in a lot of impact. Now here you can see one of the studies. This is a study actually done by a group, which is a childhood cancer patient group. So you can see Poonam Bagai, she is not a doctor. She is a patient advocate. She has published talking about access to essential medicines for children with cancer. This is also a very important study and published in the Lancet Oncology. So it is not necessary that you have to have only randomized control trials which will be published, and sir will obviously speak about this. It is a question of what is the finding, what is the question you are answering. So real world evidence studies can really do a lot. They can identify risk factors, they can identify biomarkers, screening tests, diagnosis, outcomes. They can do pharmacovigilance and safety, which of the pharmacy students is a very interesting thing, and it can be done easily by all of you. Patient reported outcomes, also called PROs, or patient oriented evidence that matters, called POEM, which is something like this. Access to essential medicines comes under the category of POEM. This is patient oriented evidence. This is something that's important for the patient, right? Data for health policy and impact assessment. And of course, our favorite current topic is AI. So training AI for everything is coming from real world evidence. Also, real world evidence helps create preliminary data for your next research. So if you do real world evidence, you can identify next question, what can be. Now let's come to planning. How can you choose, how can you make a real world evidence to make a good publication? There is a lot of real world data in between what is to be done so that it becomes real world evidence. Now, what is this question mark? Now, this is a very interesting photograph of the sky. What does it show to you is a lot of dots, and these dots are probably stars and planets. Now, what is this showing you? This is showing you one of the constellations called the Great Bear. Now, what is the difference between this and this slide is actually only the question. What are we looking for? So you may have data which is like this, massive amounts of it. Unless and until you have a question, the data cannot make sense. The question is the most important part of any research. What am I looking for? In that millions of real world data points, like somebody said, okay, if we have digital data, what can we make sense? There is millions of digital data available. The most important thing is, what are you looking for? Are you looking for prediction? Are you looking for outcomes? Are you looking for risks, odds, correlations, incidence, causality, prevalence? You can be talking about many things. But interestingly, in my 30 years, I have seen many people want to do all of this in a sample size of 30 in one study. That cannot happen. So many doctors, many researchers will come, and I have a lot of data. But you ask them, what is your research question? And they have no idea. Unless and until you have a research question, your research data makes no sense. So please, very important is to understand how to define a research question. A research question by an acronym, which all healthcare providers are very they love acronyms, is it needs to be finer. Finer means it should be feasible. When you're doing the study, it should be practical. It should be interesting. It should be novel. It should be ethical, and it should be relevant. Now let's just take an example. Because I'm a gynecologist, this is my natural go-to example. Cervical cancer vaccination. All of us, have heard about this, I'm hoping. So the first question that comes to your head, is this vaccine any good? Now, any good is not a good enough question. So let's think of what questions can be. Now, question can be, is this vaccine efficacious? Is this vaccine effective? Difference in efficacious and effective is, efficacy is in a randomized controlled trial, effective is in a real world situation. Is this vaccine safe? Can this vaccine cross protect me from COVID? Can this vaccine protect men from penile cancer? Because penile cancer is also caused by HPV. Can this vaccine prevent from oral cancer? Because oral cancer is also caused by HPV. Can this vaccine prevent death? So you can have many, many questions. Now, how will these questions come? One, you have to understand the topic. Two, you have to read a little bit about the topic. As my mentor and guide, Dr. Bhan, used to say, the most important part of writing is reading. If you read, then you can write. Now, the next question that a few students did ask, which is the right method, right? If you choose your right research question, the research question is what will indicate to you whether your study should be cross-sectional, longitudinal, case control, or any other. And we are not talking randomized control trial. We are talking real world only. So it's the research question that will define this. Now let me share with you, because people said, what are the research questions? So we have these young 11th, 12th graders and early pharmacy and MBBS students who are working with us on a program called Spark. And we told them that, like sir was saying, overall topic of interest is antimicrobial resistance, because it's a problem statement. It's a big problem in the world. So can you work on something in antimicrobial resistance? We had many children, and many of them worked in different areas. One of them actually worked in the space of finding out what happens to antibiotics when you take the antibiotic at home and you What do you do with the leftover antibiotic? Do you throw it in the dustbin? Do you throw it in the water? Do you give it to your maid when next time she has a symptom? What happens? Very simple question, very relevant answer. This publication got observation and comment from WHO about raising awareness for AMR in India. This little publication actually got visibility from the National Pharmacology something Delhi Society, who want to do a podcast on it, because it's a very relevant question. What do you do with antibiotics when you are finished using them? If there are 4 doses left, what do you do with them? Do you throw them in the water? Do you throw them in the dustbin? Does it make a difference to where it goes, in which sanitary landfill? So practical questions always are very relevant. Even the smallest question can make a publication. This is what you should do. What you should not do is this. Go to Instagram, ask this question, and there are 20 people telling you to use AI, do this, do this, do this, do this, and you have a paper in 30 minutes. Please do not do this. If you do this, you will lose any interest in research, and you will not enjoy the process, and you will not develop critical thinking. And this is not the way to. Please do not do this. Right? Research needs to make a difference. Patients are at the heart of research. Research has a purpose. Aim of research is to improve health and improve health with dignity. So our little tagline for our research, efforts of Spark by Apar Health are research में भागीदारी, स्वस्थ भारत की जिम्मेदारी. If you want to be, healthy, you have to participate in research. So in case anybody wants to know more about this program, please contact Dr. Adarsh Kesri. Adarsh is already on the WhatsApp group as well. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the interesting session. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Others, you were sending the emojis, and I wanted to send the live ones.
Yes.
After
So I'll
wonderful
quickly
talk.
introduce the journal.
Yeah, please.
I would encourage all of you to go to the website, check it out, see the kind of research we publish. We're actually a pretty old journal. We started in 2012, and we've been doing quarterly publications since then. And we focus primarily on community health. And we had been focusing more on community medicine all these years, but we're now looking at, like I said, multidisciplinary and intersectional research. So even if you're, let's say, not a community medicine professional, but you have a perspective to share a commentary, we would love to have your views. And also, if you would like to join us as a peer reviewer, you can join us as well. So you can visit our website and see what requirements we have. So that's about the journal. My contact details are at the end of the presentation, so you can always reach out to me. My number is there, and our email address is also there.
Thank you, Soumya. After a wonderful presentation by Dr. Pooja, am I audible? Yeah. So, after a wonderful presentation by Dr. Pooja, now the real world evidence is ready. What is next? If you have a trumpet, blow it loud. So how do you blow it out loud? The simple answer is to publish it. Can you not present in a conference or a workshop? Yes, you can do that. But anything in black and white, when you publish it, then it is a lifetime treasure. Now, with a short introduction, because I have a lot many slides, I think I should stick to the timeline, and I have 6 points to give away. How to identify predatory journals, select the journals aligned with your study type, structuring the manuscript for acceptance, peer review process, the revisions and authorship and ethics, common reasons for rejection and how to avoid them, and finally, our technical assistant. Let me be very clear, our technical assistant AI. It's not a professional. You are the professional who is sitting. and you have to direct AI what to do so that your intellectual capacity is still persisting or retained. Now, I presume that all the participants must have at least once they might have tried to submit a journal. If it is not, then might be this presentation might be little more difficult or little bit hypothetical. Now, I had done my study, one of the study when it was in the year 2002-3, and it took 5 years to publish it. My first publication, it came in 2008. And since then, I was thinking, I mean, all these 5 to 6 years, I was struggling hard that how to publish, how to publish. If during that time, if I would have come across this presentation of Dr. Rao, I mean, I'm referring to myself only, I would have been very happy. So presuming that all of you have burnt your fingers at least once, then this presentation would be really interesting. The first thing to find out is how to identify genuine versus predatory journals. To be specific, if you know that what is a predatory journal, the genuine journals will be obvious. There are 3 slides which I'll be talking about. First thing, if you don't recognize a single name on the editorial board, you look at the editorial board, and if you don't recognize, neither will the academic world. So that clearly indicates that, yes, there is something fishy. So there could be fake names without institutions or scholars listed without their consent at the members of the editorial board. You need to look at the editor-in-chief with affiliation. In this case, okay, you can check my authenticity, and the editorial board members you can verify. So first point is about looking at the editorial board and the journal, what kind of papers are they publishing? If you can't really understand any journal A to Z, starting from chemistry to biology, then be cautious. There has to be a focus on the journal scope and aims. Look at that. And the full publisher address, is it true or bogus? Only email contact, often Gmail or Yahoo? No. Certain times it could be possible. There is no hard and fast rule, but nevertheless, if they have a associated own domain name and vague scope and peer review. Fast food is quick, but peer review is not. So that means you need to have a good amount of patience. That peer review completed in 48 hours, because guaranteed acceptance, this could be the assurance from the journal side. So a clear review process may take at least 2 to 6 weeks. So that, and the process has to be transparent. And the most important thing is about the indexing of an. Always verify the indexing on the official indexing database, because the journal can have its own database, own website, where they will say that yes, it is very much indexed in Scopus or PubMed. Then you need to go to the PubMed website, Scopus, Embase, or Web of Science, any of these recognized indexing websites. And if it is indexed in Google Scholar, yes, Google Scholar also can be, but there is a joke behind this. I'll be coming to that. If a journal offers festive discounts like Mintra, no. If it is APC, on the APC, if it is giving that, okay, there is a discount, then probably it's not celebrating science. APCs are clearly stated and charged after the acceptance, not that, okay, you submit it and later on, okay, you submit it today and avail a 50% discount. A careless website often means careless publishing. So you need to be very sure about the website that, again, are they indexed in the PubMed or not, indexed in Google or a fake impact factor. Now, the last slide to speak about the predatory journal. If you are never published in that field, they call you as a global expert. Many times, many spurious emails they come. Dear eminent researcher, your outstanding work, maybe in a workshop or some conference you have spoken, and they say that they praise you a lot. Journal email invitations are usually on a professional tone without flattery. Read at least one full article. If it scares you, run away. Regular publication schedule, if it is there or not, and articles look peer reviewed or well structured or not. Poor quality or irrelevant papers will guide you saying that could be a predatory journal. And the final point is about the publisher reputation and external verification. If the publisher is any of the members of the leading groups like COPE, DOAJ, or hundreds of the journals across the unrelated fields they might be having, the publisher is having, then it is suspicious. And finally, before taking a call, think, check, and submit. And you need to consult your guides or the peers. The second agenda is about the indexing. Yes, indexing, it provides you that, yes, the journal has got a substantial value. If you look at the journal metrics, many a time we look at the impact factor. Do you mean to say that the impact factor, if it is high, the quality also will be high? Not necessarily. There are many other factors which will be required. So, for example, Google Scholar also indexes grocery lists. That doesn't mean that doesn't make them a good journal. Now, impact factor is issued by Clarivate citation reports. On Scopus, you have certain figures like SJR, SNAP, and site score. Those are the things which you need to verify. And the metrics should be used to compare the journal within the same discipline. What happens is, let us suppose a journal which has got working on nuclear sciences. Obviously, there would not be that many articles to present, and the citation will not be going high. That doesn't mean that you would be comparing with a public health journal or some journal like a Lancet. So impact factor, if you are comparing, it has to be on the not across the fields, it has to be in the same field. Beware of the fake, inflated, or invented metrics displayed on the journal website. They do on their own. And the visibility beyond metrics, what we need to understand is there are a good number of open access journals may improve the reach, but open access does not automatically equal to quality. Like, for example, PLOS ONE is an open access journal and it has maintains equality, but there are good number of journals which do not. Now, moving to the third agenda of selecting an appropriate journal. There is a important comment. If you are submitting to a wrong journal, is like sending a love letter to the wrong person. Be assured that rejection is guaranteed. So the point remains is that there is a straight branching out phenomenon, which I have a flow chart I have designed. At the end, you can take this. Does the journal scope match your topic? If answer is no, stop there, then and there, and find another journal. So the journal should have clearly described the aims and the scope, must closely align with your studies design, topic, or a discipline. If it is yes, is the journal indexed in PubMed, Scopus, Embase, or Web of Science, EBSCO? Now, if it is no, there could be high risk. But there are few journals, like for example, Discover Public Health. One of the journal doesn't have an impact factor, and currently it is of course not indexed. But nevertheless, it is a follow-up of another journal. So you try to look at that. Now, if yes, the journal is indexed, have similar studies been published there? No, there could be a possible mismatch. Think again. Follow the author guidelines very carefully. And if yes, does the journal accept your study type? There could be, now, for example, the journals, this categorically mention that they accept case reports, qualitative studies, or randomized trials. Whatever they are mentioning, you have to focus on that. And if there is no to this answer, then there could be a possible mismatch. And finally, I look at the review timelines, APC, and ethics, if it is transparent. Because predatory journals can have compromised on these aspects. And if questions to all of this is yes, you can submit with confidence. But a word of caution is avoid this. One journal fits all philosophy is never happening. So the area which you will be publishing, you have to choose that which particular journal fits in there. And choosing only by the impact factor, no, it's not. But on an average, if the impact factor is more than one, clarivate, then it is okay. Submitting your first paper to Lancet, yes, ambition is good, but realism is better. But let me tell you what we do. We do submit to high impact factor journals where the turnaround time is, this is a secret, turnaround time is maybe 2 days to 4 days or within a week. And what you do is we get a feedback on your journal, that your article saying that yes, these are the improvements, these are the defects what you can improve upon, and then you submit it to another journal so that you save your time and you get attention of the good reviewers. And the reality check, categorically, I'll be saying something that let us suppose in a regional area you're working somewhere, and that particular result is applicable. If you're working in India, it has to be applicable to Indian population. If you publish it in an international journal, the reader database would not be using it. So don't be disheartened saying that if a journal has rejected, you have to go for it where it can create an impact. Now, coming to the how do we structure the manuscript for acceptance? There are few important things that editors reject papers for poor structure faster than the poor statistics. So that means how you structure the article, even though you have good statistics, they would not go into that. So the fastest way to experience disk rejection is ignoring the author guidelines. Author guidelines has to be copied and put up into a Word format, and line by line has to be compared again and again with your article format if it is fitting in properly or not. Match the aim and scope, word limit, references and tables. These are the important points. What they are not the suggestions. You have to stick to their guidelines. If the readers can't find the novelty, neither will the editor. It may so happen that when you are producing a result, it may be novel for you, but discuss with your peer group and oh, what's big about it. So you have to say that how have you moved from a known fact to the unknown? What gap is your research has been able to address? And is it adding any new value? Yes, then it's okay. And a word of caution on plagiarism. Plagiarism doesn't save time, it just delays rejection. Because at the end of that, even today, when you are producing a paper through AI, for example, recently we submitted a project proposal to ICMR for a funding. Even they have AI tools to detect that, okay, how much of AI have you used? So be careful, focus on original writing and proper citations. Clearly state the ethics approval, consent and funding and conflicts if there are any conflicts of interest between the authors or the funding agents. And the last part about the acceptance, how to structure the manuscript. Good science written badly still reads like bad science. Remove the typos, grammar errors, formatting chaos. At this junction, you would be able to use AI. Because AI and Grammarly, these are the tools where you can use, improve, but give your own language. Be clear and concise, and there should be a logical flow. Checklist. Many of the journals, they come up with a checklist. They don't limit your creativity, they limit reviewer anger. So If you follow this checklist, and especially there are several checklists for the type of studies what you are doing, whether it is a cross-sectional study or a randomized trial, you need to follow this checklist and be compliant with that. Nothing hurts more than acceptance followed by an unexpected invoice. So you should be prepared to confirm before submission whether the APC is clearly being spelled out. And there are two types of APCs. One is subscription option or gold actions. Gold access you have to pay upfront, and the article will be in the web on the web as quickly as possible. But if the subscription offer, maybe after a year or so, that will come online. And understand the copyrights and reuse rights if you are using any of the material from other research databases or other researchers, then you have to acknowledge. And coming to the submission strategy, yes, the cover letter is your first impression. It should introduce your paper not as an autobiography. What do you mean by that? It should be very compact. Keep it just one page. No drama. Briefly state the study design and the key findings and what's new in your. So this should catch the attention of the editor. That what is the study design, what are the key findings, are they relevant? The editor will be focusing on it. And what's new about it, which has novelty. Finally, why does it fit to this journal? Because you have gone through the scope and you have to give an answer that, yes, this is the right journal. Desk rejection doesn't take it personally because editor is saying that it's not you, it's not here. But that means you are the researcher, the research output, what you have produced is good, maybe good, but this is not the place. There are many Elsevier journals. If there is a mismatch, then they direct you to submit in other journals. So there could be a mismatch or a methodological weaknesses or ethics or similar issues where you need to compromise and use the feedback given by the rejection, and you don't resubmit without changing. You have to comply with the all the feedback whichever has been given by the rejection team. Transferring to another journal, changing the journals without changes is like forwarding a same CV after rejection. So that means if you go on applying without making any changes, land up in final rejection. Transfer if the study is solid but out of scope, modify the manuscript, and many a times the journal follows a reference pattern. Maybe a APA style or a Vancouver style. There are several styles of references, and rewrite the cover letter for the new journal. Very everything was changed, but except the cover letter where it was addressing to, it was a good paper and it was addressing to the previous journal who had rejected. So this was by an oversight, but this is a major flaw. And the final page on the submission strategy is managing the delays. If there is no response, that doesn't mean that it is being rejected. Maybe the editor is also waiting. Check for the review timelines before submission if you are really in a hurry. But good journals, they take a lot of time. For example, Indian Journal of Medical Research, they have at least sometimes 6 to 8 reviewers. They go through that, and all of them they come up with contradicting advices also. So it takes a lot of time for the editor to revert back. If delays persist, withdraw formally before submitting to another journal. Simultaneous submission, yes, one manuscript, one journal. Research is not speed dating. So that means you are not in a hurry. It is absolutely unethical. It risks your reputation and future submission. And smart timeline management, good authors play plan B before plan A fails. So that means you have to keep the journals which are the ones which are in the pipeline. Once you get rejected with the first journal, go to the second journal and prepare it as per the author guidelines. Choose the journals with the realistic review times. Keep a ranked backup list ready. And almost I'm coming to the end of the presentation, is about the peer review process. This is the post submission, what really happens back end. You are submitting, this share, in the interest of time, this particular slide we will share it. Actually, most of the journals follow this publication process. So the peer review is not your enemy. The reviewer is not your enemy. It's your manuscript's gym session. So that means when the peer reviewer is putting up his comments, it is improving your strength of the paper to increase the rigor, credibility, and to reproducibility. So the quality control is nothing but, this is, peer review is something like quality control department of science. It improves good science and exposes weak science. So all the comments what you take come from the peer reviews, you have to take it positively. Usually two or more independent reviewers are sent, as I mentioned, because there would be opposing views also. In IJMR, for example, at least two experts read the paper, so one person doesn't suffer alone. So what I mean to say is that two people, they will view it from two perspectives. It takes weeks to months. Peer review is slow because good criticism cannot be rushed. It depends on journal scope and reviewer availability. Very recently, on one of the journals we submitted, that is yesterday only got accepted into BMJ Women's Health. It's a very good impact factor journal, 3.2 or 7, something like that. And what happened is, it was our paper was pending with them almost like 7 weeks, because whenever we contacted them, they said that, okay, we are still in the lookout for an appropriate reviewer. Truthfully, they did it after 2.5 months, and yesterday it got accepted. One reviewer checks what you have studied. It's something like a subject expert, and other one would be something like a methodological expert or a statistician. And responding to reviews, yes, you may argue with the data, but not with the emotions. It's a scholarly conversation. It's not a fight. Take it always positively. And the final word, the reasons why typically revisions typically requested by the reviewers. If the editor asks why this study, that means the manuscript hasn't been able to answer it yet. Research gap is not clear, justification not clear, and the justification is either weak or missing. Contribution to the literature is unclear. Method should explain what you did, not make the reviewer guess. So explicitly, your words should speak why you have chosen that particular method. Reviewers often ask for clarity on sample size and recruitment, sampling methods. Why this method or not the other one? So you need to respond to those peer reviewers. If the data is whispers, don't make it shout. So that means the data has to speak for itself. Results and discussion, overstated findings. You may say that correlation is present as a causation. If correlation is present, that not necessarily is implying causation, and the limitations are missing or minimized. A good story helps good science and gets accepted. So you need to come up that the flow of the article should be in a way that it is like a scientific story. And the communication and flow, improve the logical flow, fix the language, grammar, and formatting. And not to ignore the authorship and ethics. Remember, integrity is not optional. Authorship is not a souvenir that everyone involved will get one. For example, there are several criteria which are being implied. ICMJE criteria, where there is a substantial contribution by all the people who are taking the authorship. There is something called gift author or a ghost author. You might have come across. It should not be. If someone appears only at the acceptance stage, and they are probably not an author. Let me tell you, one of the journals which we submitted to tobacco control, And over there, unfortunately, there were some restrictions on the financial. There was a financial APC charges were very high, and we looked for financial support. And the people who supported, they had worked back end, but it was not given because their institution has not given the permission. And we took their permission, and when we submitted as one more extra author, journal had taken us really for a ride, but finally we could convince. A few words on ethics. Ethics approval is under process, is not acceptable because ethics is before collecting the data from the patient. So ethics committee, IRB or the institutional review board name, their approval date and the reference number should clearly be highlighted. Nowadays, Government of India has also made very particular that the ethical committee, respective ethical committee, they put it on the website. If the participant can recognize themselves, anonymity has failed. It is complete violation of patient identity. Confidentiality and sensitivity data has to be handled very carefully. And this is the responsibility of the author to protect privacy and anonymity. No conflict of interest still needs to be declared. Silence looks suspicious. So permissions and funding has to be clearly been said. So common rejection regions, how to avoid. Most rejections are preventable and usually have nothing to do with bad science. So common rejections, if the numbers look unbelievable, reviewers too won't believe them. So why rejected? Because implausible prevalence, very high prevalence of neck pain in students. If your study is finding a high prevalence, you need to justify what could be the reason with appropriate literature. A wrong study design answers the questions nobody has asked. So, for example, if a cross-sectional study you are putting and outcomes are changing over time, you are commenting, that means it's a cross-sectional study one time. It's not a cohort study. So, it's a wrong information. Obvious for rejection, illogical or poorly justified interventions. Comparing unrelated interventions confuses reviewers faster than the statistics. Let us suppose you are comparing between ultrasound versus yoga. Now, poor interpretation of results. If p-value is not significant, enthusiasm should not be significant. So that means when something has come as it is not a true finding, then conclusion should exceed the data and interpret cautiously. And reviewers reject papers they struggle to read, even if the science is good. For example, weak flow or a grammar issues. And the last word is about AI. Use of AI to polish your words, not to think for you. AI is a tool, not a co-author, and it's nothing but a clerk. Use AI cautiously and transparently, and journal policies are changing every day, and it is still evolving. And for that reason, you have to focus that what's usually okay, improving the language, grammar, clarity, enhancing the flow and formatting, helping non-native English speakers to express the ideas, and AI may fix your English. It cannot fix your science. What is not okay? Designing studies or choosing methods, interpreting results or drawing conclusions, generating data and doing analysis and putting up the references. Because many a time AI also goes through hallucinations. There are no true references which are available in real world and which you will be using the AI references and making authorship or ethical decisions. Author responsibility, yes. If it is wrong, AI did it, can't be a defense. So you remain responsible for accuracy, originality, and ethics. Editors don't fear AI, they fear undisclosed AI. So you need to give a clear statement always what is the journal's AI policy. Accordingly, you give an acknowledgement. Disclose AI use when required in the cover letter or a disclosure statement at the end of your manuscript just before the references. Clearly state how AI was used, whether to improve the language or editing or vocabulary, all that. Thank you so much. I was really rushing through in the interest of time.
Wonderfully said, Dr. Venkata. There were so many things. I think the one big, real great message that I liked was send it to a good journal which has a good turnaround time. And we use that a lot. We just today got back very nice feedback on one of our papers
Absolutely,
with a
absolutely,
rejection, but it has given such great feedback, it will improve it beautifully. The paper will be lovely when it goes to the next journal.
absolutely.